What is up, everybody? We are here for the final episode of Orb on the movements of the Earth. This one is entitled question mark. So before we get into it, I think there's a decent amount to talk about, which is fair because it's the last episode of this show ever, our last reaction to this series. I do want to say that I hope I remember to talk about at the end of this where this show kind of ranks in the top anime of the year. I know the first half of it kind of aired in the year prior, but the second half in this year, and the second half is, I think it's pretty inarguable that it's the better half because there's so many end of character arcs and deaths and whatnot. So yeah, my immediate thoughts right now before we finish it off with the final episode is that I probably wasn't expecting it to stick the landing so well. And even though I'm watching it, like I'm finishing it 10 months late, it very well might be the best anime of the year that I've seen personally, even though it's been a majority of the year already and so many other shows have come out this year. I'm thinking of like maybe Taco P is a good contender, City the Animation, some other ones, but yeah, this one actually might be number one for me. We'll see how I feel at the end of the episode. Then we'll probably see again when we're closer to the end of the year. 2025, that is, in case that's unclear. Another thing is that I watched the last like 6 episodes of this show in the same night. So right now is me after watching 5 episodes in a row. I'm kind of tired, but we're really excited to jump into this last one. But on the note of the previous 5 episodes that I watched, because they were in direct succession of each other, I wasn't really reading any discussion threads or anything or getting other people's interpretations or comments to influence my my theories, my own interpretations, and what I thought going forward into the next episode, which in its own way was really enjoyable for me to kind of film these last few reactions as my own kind of very personal experience and my own theories and stuff unaffected by others. I think there's a plus and minuses to both approaches. It was fun to do this because it's probably the show that we've done. It's the only show that we've done this for in a very long while. Usually when I'm recording reactions, I'm not watching like 6 episodes in a row. If I'm following them weekly, then of course there's the week-long breaks between episodes and I'm like reading the episode discussion threads and stuff. It was nice to do that little binge and have our own little private corridor of thoughts and stuff. But because coincidentally, our battery on the earbuds were running low, so I had to charge them before we jumped into this very last one. I took that time to read the discussion thread for episode 24, the one right before this one. Not the other ones before that. Those ones I probably will read eventually too. I just only had time to check out the latest one. And reading those comments on the Reddit thread, which is only 300 comments, by the way, which is super underrated for the show. The show's so good. It should have way more comments than that. But nonetheless, the people that did comment there, the 300 that were there, were very enlightening for me because I was finding out about all this shit about the real life history and stuff. So being mind blown by that kind of stuff is why I say there's like plus and minuses to both approaches, and I'm kind of happy that we were able to do both tonight in a sense. It's got me going like full Pepe Silva mode at 4 a.m. in the morning right now. But yeah, so I do want to reference some of those comments, stuff that I didn't think about at all or didn't notice at all, specifically in regard to none other than our first main character Rafal's return to the story. So there's a lot of interpretations that I think I'm on board with for the most part, but still have like a hint of maybe doubt that it'll go in a different direction. Is that this return of Rafal is actually marking not necessarily like a different timeline or universe, but just like a meta different take on the story. Like it's kind of not the same timeline or universe, but it's not doing like parallel or alternate universes in the same cliche way that most stories are doing. It's that whole story that we just saw, which you could kind of argue is filler, but is meant to give us the context of seeing and feeling what it would be like, getting that emotional weight of what it would be like if those people were persecuted, and something as common today as knowing that the earth revolves around the sun was, oppressed by the powers that be at the time. And this apparently, now that we're here with Rafal back, this is actually a different timeline, quote unquote, that is more rooted in real life where he was able to, all those characters were able to kind of, for the most part, freely study about those things. And it seems like the biggest clue of that is that I must have missed it, but it said for the first time a real life location, Poland, when it started Albert's storyline. And until then, it was more vague, and it was referring to the story that we've saw so far as taking place in a place called P Kingdom, which is vague, but it kind of probably refers to Poland, but in, a vague fictional kind of way, as a way to note that that was like a more fictional historical story, and now we're more rooted in reality. And this is all apparently, I know pretty much nothing about like the history of astronomy and stuff like that, especially when you're going into like specific areas like Poland or something. Apparently, Albert is the name of a scientist that a Polish scientist that studied about heliocentrism and stuff, and actually influenced more well-known historical figures, I guess you could say, like Copernicus. So it seems like it took a kind of turn into real life history as opposed to a fictional history. And then also there's like apparently clues in the opening, which we are going to try to focus on since this is the last time we'll be seeing it, unfortunately, because the song is a banger. But yeah, we'll pay attention to some of the clues in there because apparently there are some clues in there that might indicate the same as well. And then what else did we want to talk about? Yeah, it almost seems like the episode title, just simply being a question mark, is kind of like the author too, kind of acknowledging like that he's trolling us with this complete confusion about whether this is reality or the same story or whatever. And right, I just remembered on the topic of that, on the flip side, the reason why I'm kind of skeptical about that is because if you're gonna change it from the kind of fictional story to the real life one now, that means it marks a point of no return, right? But in my opinion, unless I'm just missing things, there are still a fair amount of stuff from the original fictional plot that could still use further context or explanation at the very end now to wrap the story up nicely in a bow. Like, what exactly did Yolenta send in that bird that Draka was able to send off? Maybe the Grabowski thing. How did Ruffles necklace get in the hands of another heretic that eventually went to Otzi? I don't think that was ever really explained. So yeah, that the fact that there are still like dramatic elements that we could use closure and more revelations on from the fictional aspect makes me think that we haven't completely abandoned that. Further, in the current timeline now with also Albert, they kind of gave us a sneak peek at something tragic happening to him with his father being murdered. So if this is supposed to be real life now and we get kind of like a happy ending where Rafal and whatnot get to study, there's still apparently tragedy in ahead. So it's still gonna delve into some more dramatic fictional elements. It's not like, I'm not saying that people can't have their dads murdered in real life and stuff, but yeah. Also, another clue that a comment mentioned was that the I noticed in the last episode that one of the characters in that meeting that Rafal brought Albert to with like-minded scholars, one of them looked like Yolenta. Someone noted that too, and they also mentioned that the priest that Albert talked to in the confessional is voiced by the same voice actor who voiced the character who was the friend of the one who saved Yolenta and got burned alive. And he grew up, he was present after the one of the time skips as well. We saw him as an older inquisitor who was trying to make Ash more of a sympathetic person. So, alongside the Yolenta thing, it kind of contributes to the theory that this is an alternate universe where they were able to do good things because they were given the opportunity to be more open and free about their passion. So Yolenta was able to take part in this like guild or like community of like-minded scholars, and then the Inquisitor kid, the newbie that grew up, got to become a pretty respected, I guess, priest who apparently is gonna invent the whole confessional thing. So yeah, that I think is most or all of what we wanted to kind of lay out there before we finally jump into our final episode of Orb on the movements of the Earth. What could quite possibly be our #1 anime of 2025. So, are we ready to do this? I don't know. All right, I am pressing play for episode 25 entitled ? In 3, 2, 1. Let's go, guys. Okay, so we're back at this guild with Rafal kind of being the leader, apparently. He's kind of speaking like they've had to endure persecution, though. There's no way Albert experienced something this young and he abandoned it to be a baker unless something traumatic and tragic happened. Afraid? Why are you afraid, Rafal? Oh, I forgot to mention how apparently there was a comment about how it might have chosen Poland as a basis because that was historically maybe a place that was so like small and niche that the ban on heliocentrism might have taken place. So that might contribute to what Anthony said to Nowak actually being more true than we thought and not just him like gaslighting Nowak. How big is Poland? To think that these characters could have maybe just emigrated to another nearby country and not be killed for this kind. Okay, guys, last time we're seeing this opening. Let's lock in. Albert at the front here. We didn't go back to Rafal as the opening shot in the end, I guess. Got Albert. So there was like a comment saying about... Okay, no, don't have time for that. Is that Otzi as a kid? Doing the clothes? No, that's Draka's village. The villagers recycling the clothes. So this is Rafal, Badeni, Otzi, Yolenta, Nowak, Draka. Okay. That's Anthony. The 3 heretics. Frey's a traitor. He doesn't belong. Draka. Oh, the vial that Yolenta gave her. Anthony. This is Albert. This is Rafal. Yolenta with her daddy. Yolenta... Draka, Badeni, Otzi, Hubert, Albert's hand. Huh. What was... Okay. And this is a standard length episode. Only 24 minutes.
そんな謙遜よしてくれよ。僕らは対等だよ。じゃあ、ちょっと僕は用があるから席を外すけど、君は楽しんでくれ。あっちのテーブルで宇宙論の話が聞けると思う。
You just gotta leave him
君の
here?
興味に合うはずだよ。宇宙
Is it gonna be the table with Yolenta? Is that Yolenta under the hood right there?
途中で帰るなんて悲しいことしないで、しっかり最後までいてくれよ。はい、もちろん。それじゃ、また後で。
Are you gonna walk the kid home at least later?
そこで俺が秘密裏に手に入れたネタなんだが、イブン・シャーテルっつうお偉いさんがバラーガ学派の問題意識を継いでプトレマイオスモデルの等速運動。
あ、いえ、すいません。続けてください。
うん、それでな、イブン・シャーテルが何をしたかっつうと。
やばい。
What's going on? Doubt everything?
観測記録すっかりつけ忘れてた。どうしよう。今から一度帰って戻ったらさすがに会は終わっちゃってるだろうな。けど今日は特別な日だし、一日くらい記録つけなくても問題ないか。
What's going on? Is he gonna skip but then
ちょっと帰ります。
Okay, that's not
今日は
Yolenta.
ありがとうございました。
おう、また来いよ。
はい、失礼します。
This is where his dad dies? While he was gone? Dude, he left early and he still doesn't get back until pitch dark? Rafal just left him alone?
すぐ戻れるかも。
そうすればカイはまだ。
But why is he so concerned with recording every day? I thought he said he did it with Rafal killed his dad. Interesting. Rafal killed his dad. Who had that on their bingo card?
おっと。
何知って。
あ、いや、面倒なことになったな。うん。君の気持ちはわかる。混乱してるよね。
What is going on?
でも、まずは冷静になってほしい。理性的に対応すれば、この状況も飲み込めるはずだ。君ならできる。最初に言いたいのは、こんなことになったのは僕の本意じゃないってこと。僕は穏便に済ませたかった。じゃあ、一から説明しよう。実は少し前に噂で聞いたんだ。君のお父さんがある資料を持っていると。それは宇宙の形を根本から変えてしまう画期的な説に関するものだ。僕はもうずっと昔からその説に興味があってね。ただどこにも手がかりがなくて諦めてたんだが、やっと糸口が見つかったってわけさ。だからぜひ情報を共有して研究しようと提案した。悪い提案じゃなかったはずだよ。正直あの説は君のお父さんの手には余る代物だ。僕の頭脳と社会的地位がなければ宝の持ち腐れに終わる。
What is going on?
協力の見返りも十分与えるし、双方が得する提案だった。
Arthur
けど
Albert
ここで問題発
goes
生。
on to be a baker after
彼は
this.
僕の誘いを断っ
So
た。
he lives.
迷いもせず。何でもこの説は現状の宇宙論と異なるもので、弾圧される可能性もある。子供もいるから危ないことはしたくない。だってさ、ずいぶん心配性だ。弾圧の危険なんて政治次第でいくらでも避けられる。なのに聞く耳を持たない。いや、それだけならまだいい。粘り強く説得してたら彼は怒り始め、最後には資料を燃やすと言った。なんというか、これには言葉を失ったよ。知だの学びだの言っておいて保身に走る俗物だったわけだ。
Rafal's evil?
今のはお父さんに対して失礼だね。
What
撤
is
回する
going
よ。
on?
ごめん。まあ、とにかく取り乱して今にも何かしでかしそうだった。だから落ち着かせた。しょうがなくね。君のお父さんは知を共有しないで独占してた。それはあってはならない罪だ。そういう考えは排除すべきだ。
He's
いいかい？
being too
こ
radical
の
on the
状況
other
で大
side
切なの
now.
は、これで君のお父さんが受け継いだ知は失われずに済んだってことさ。この世の美しさのためなら犠牲はやむを得ない。
Blah, 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 blah,
こ
blah.
れで納得したろ？
Are they trying to really do some takeaway where if our heroes don't die tragic death,
結局
they go on to
彼
become
は
a
その演
villain,
説が終わってすぐ
like some Dark Knight shit?
村の人たちに捕らえられました。その後は知ら
Got
ない。
captured by the townspeople?
バカですよね。
Who's he telling the story
あっ
to?
けなさすぎる。父は言った。疑えと。彼は誰も信頼せず資料を共有しないで殺された。先生は言った。信じろと。結果彼は自らの信念に従って殺人も厭わなくなった。
Okay, interesting. Two different
死に関わ
perspectives.
ったものの末路です。
Then his
学問
takeaway
など
is just
信
that
頼なのは人
being
間には
involved
荷
at
が
all
重
with
い。
knowledge is bad.
だから大学なんて全くバカらしい。
Oh, he's talking to the priest. I forgot.
どちらか選択する必要がありますか？疑念と信念2つ持っていて不都合が。
So is this gonna be the same
Flexible.
character that
So
this
that's
voice
what we
actor
should
voiced in the previous
聖
acts?
アクイナスは知性を一方では物体的で他方では非物体的と捉えました。肉体と魂、理性と
Holy
神
shit, guys. We only got
哲学と
14
神
more
学
minutes until this
疑
story
う
is
ことと
completely
信じる
over.
こと、これらの矛盾は両立します。なぜか、それが人間だからです。人間は神でも獣でもないその中間に存在する。でもだからこそ矛盾を曖昧を混乱を受け入れられる。むしろそこで
Damn, this character right
Yes.
here, whose face we haven't seen. I don't think we even know his name, right?
あなたは今神を
Is
失
he
ってい
really
る。
gonna be the last character to dish
Tsumaり,
out some
この世界が存在するという
Life talk
奇跡を感じられないでいる。奇跡とは必然に満ちた領域で生まれる偶然のことです。と同時に偶然に満ちた領域で必然が生まれることです。昔のあなたはそれらを感じていた。この世のすべてが奇跡的だと知っていた。しかし経験や記憶、過去や故郷、そして痛みと引き換えに奇跡まで失ってしまった。それこそ あなたが生きる場所だったのに。
勝手に決めないでください。
どうすればいいかわかりますか？
知りませんよ。
単純です。空を見ればいいのです。そして深く息を吸う。
This priest kind of talks with too
こ
much
れはそんな簡単な問題じゃないです。
charisma too.
もちろん
He seems like an
でも
overly fictitious
乗り越えられない
character.
わけじゃない。コリント人への手紙第10章13節。神は真実な方です。あなた方を耐えられない試練に合わせることはなさいません。むしろ耐えられるように試練とともに脱出の道も備えてくださいます。では、あなたが勇気を出してくださったので、私も人には言えない悩みを告白し
Oh,
ま
this
す。
is going to be juicy. My own secret.
それは私が昔友人を見殺しにしたことです。
Okay, yeah, this is going to be the friend.
発端は友人がある仕事で重大な違反を犯してしまったんです。取り返しのつかないことをした。その結果、彼は死んだ。しかし彼の罪が重いからこそ彼を諭し救うことが重要だった。あの時どうするのが正解だったのか答えは出ていません。
Those two used to be in the opening,
今後
but
も
they
いる
took
か
him
わかりま
out,
せん。
which is
しか
kind
し
of weird because
一つだけはっき
of
りし
how
てるの
much
は、
relevance he has now.
今日まで私があの過去から目をそらしてきたことです。でも今初めてこの悩みを言葉にで
So
きた。
this is going to root
そ
this
のせいで今日
current
からより一層苛まれるでしょう。
story to the story so far. It's not like a
しかし、
different
同時に、
universe or timeline.
今日が
then.
一歩目になったと信じます。
So is it even going to bother
そ
to
れは
explain
あなた
how
も同じ
Raphael
です。
lived?
あなたは私に話してくれた。だからきっと進める。
And why they
神は私た
tarnished
ちを認
Raphael's
めてくださる。
image?
そして神はいつでも私たちの居場所になってくださる。しかしそのためには
ふう
私たちが私たち自身を乗り越え神に向き合わなければならない。そして孤独に問い続けなければならない。自分は神に認めてもらえる存在なのだろうか。
いくら悩んで問うても神は口を開かない。
そうですよ。だから永遠に私たちは考え続けられるのです。私はそれを幸福だと思いたい。では最後に一つ質問です。効果を捧げればパンを得られる。税を捧げれば権利を得られる。労働を捧げれば報酬を得ら
Ooh,
れる。
this is an interesting riddle.
なら一体何を捧げれば
For
この世
salvation?
のすべてを
Truth
知
of
れ
the
る
world.
と思いますか？その
Honestly,
答えを探してください。
a final episode being
何のため
pretty
に？
much entirely
この世で
a
再び
confessional
生きるため。
conversation with the priest is pretty good flex. Well, I guess
そ
it
こで
won't
大
be
学へ行くの
entirely
は
just one,
一つの道だと思
one
い
of
ま
a
すよ。
few scenes.
では、神のご加護を。
Go to college. That's apparently the takeaway. Just make sure it's not a party school. Dude, what is going on? There's only 8 minutes left. Oh, draw that thing. Is it going to be Sagittarius or another constellation? This is
この世の美しさのためなら犠牲はやむを得ない。
how good or bad do they want us to
僕
think
は
of
何があろう
Raval?
と君の好奇心を否定しない。
That was such a random murder. I mean, narratively, it gave us the reason for why Albert has this complex, but in association with Rafal's character, it feels so random. Oh, he was pretty much drawing the whole constellation, I guess, but it started with Sagittarius, which is what Rafal taught him, so he's willing to hold that deer still, even
Sensei.
though...
この世の美しさを追
And
求
he's
したい。
even referring to him as
そのた
sensei.
めに何か犠牲になっても構
Sacrifices
わ
are
ない。
unavoidable.
はっきり言って僕も同意見です。だけどあなたのやり方では美しさに到達できなかった。この世の全てを知るために何を捧げればいいかなんてわからないけど、隠そうとする父さんも排除しようとする先生も有効じゃなかったことだけは
I
確
can
かだ。
kind of be down with this show ending with like just some quote unquote random
そうじゃなきゃこの世界には挑めない。
person going to university and just an open-ended ending that
社
they're
会的な動物だ。
imply that they're going to go on to do contribute to the
Sensei.
field.
僕もタウマ善意を感じます。
But like
それを肯定し続けます。
what they did to
あなたとは
Rafal's
違ったや
character
り
is
方で。
wild.
疑いながら進んで信じながら戻っ
Yeah,
て
he's gonna believe and
美
doubt.
しさにきらめきに迫り詰めてみせます。
And then
おお、戻ったか。ずいぶん遅かったな。
親方、
bro, you still got that tuition for me
大
or
学
did
へ
you
行かせてください。
did you buy a fucking hot tub with that money already?
君が
入学希望者
Yo, is this like Professor gonna
アル
be
ベル
Rafal
ト
or
君
some
だっ
shit?
け
はい。
ここにサインして。
Oh, it kind of harkens back to Rafal going. He was gonna go to college or school
アル
for.
ベルト・ブルゼ
Yeah,
フスキ
so Albert Brudevsky or whatever
ブ
is
ルゼボ
a
僕の地
real
元の名
life
です
person, and Brudezo is a real life
Sign
village
was
in Poland.
はあま、なんでもいいけど。
In case you did
Yeah,
not know,
ashitagara
that's
hina
something
jigyo
I
okete.
found out reading the discussion thread for last week's last episode. 5 minutes, guys. We're at the 5-minute mark. And it's all over. All the movements of the Earth is over. The Earth stops moving in 5 minutes. What is this? Rafal. He's on the stake. Is this Otzi? Draka? Why did it skip the Bedeni? Is maybe Rafal in this timeline just like a figment? Maybe it just shows Rafal instead of the person who actually killed his dad as just some artistic choice or something? Why did it skip Bedeni? That was messed up. 4 minutes, guys. 4 minutes.
郵便
T minus. Oh, Yolenta's letter?
ポトツキさん宛てに
Potoki.
ポトツキ？いや、そんな名前の人全然知らないよ。
でも住所は間違いなくここ
確かにそう書いてあるけど。ほら、もしかしたら
Isn't that
お前
the,
ここに住
that's
んで
the
た人とかかな
title of the book right there? I think I
だ
saw.
ってこんなの身に覚えないよ。権利書以下の著作物が出版された際、利益の1割を贈与しますって。
Is this Rafal's letter or
しか
Yolenta's
し
letter?
この本ってやつの題名もなんだ、
Yes.
地球の運動についてって。
書き違いかな。運動するのは天球だし。
なんか怪しいな。出版されるって本が同封されてるわけでもないし。
地球の運動についてか。ん
Question mark. I'm just as confused. Oh, history lesson.
アルベルト・ブルゼフスキは
Okay.
23歳で
This is
クラ
just
ク
real
フ大
life
学に入
history.
学、後に同大学で20年にわたり教員として働く。大学では主に数学と自然
Okay,
哲学を
so
教
he
え、
wasn't really into
そ
heliocentrism
の際
at one
従
point.
来の天動説一般に対して疑念を示すような講義を行ったが、結論は保留した。
But refrained from drawing conclusions.
1482年、彼は当時の天文学の教科書惑星の新理論への
New
注釈書を書
theories
き、
of the planets.
同書は大学で広く学び続けられた。1491年、彼の注釈書で天文を学んだ
Copernicus.
同大学の生徒の一人にコペルニクスという名の青年がいた。
So that was kind of a beautiful connection to real life history. It does kind of the end. It does kind of symbolize the payoff of the story of our characters up into that point where but also like the natural passage of time making the times change in terms of like like the communication of knowledge. I'm kind of confused on the timeline still, and also it felt like a bit too coincidental and plot device ish that he walked past him literally when that guy said the word on the movements of the earth. But at the same time, it's not like it totally made him realize anything. It like had this subtle psychological effect on him, and he kept thinking that the universe, the heavens move and not the earth, until he was a professor, and only decades later did he entertain the thought and like write about it seriously on a scholastic level. But I'm still confused. So that was, I believe, Yolenta's letter. What the fuck just happened? So if we're going back, none of their concrete plans succeeded? Okay, so first off, this is good because in the sense that the author of Orb here wrote a fictional story, but it didn't mess with history too much. It didn't make it so that these fictional characters were the ones responsible for real life historical foundings. In the end, he brought it back to just having a very subtle fictional imaginational influence on the real life person who would go on to make, or real life person and peoples that would make history. So in that sense, it's good. But from if we're just focusing on the narrative and how entertaining it was as a story for us, it sucks that it doesn't suck outright, but it sucks that in reviewing all of this that happened, their efforts were arguably gone to waste because none of the actual accomplishments, scientific foundings, and research and stuff were ever disseminated enough to have a true effect or for them to even be acknowledged. So I did see a comment on the discussion thread for last week's episode, and they were talking about the opening, which is something I was trying to look for in the opening when I watched it, but I still didn't really see it. But they were saying something about how when Albert only opens his hand to receive the necklace when Rafal closes his, then also when it shows the montage of all the characters that we've become used to, the main characters like Otzi, Badeni, and stuff, it would fade to black as if saying their names will be completely unknown to history, just like that episode title was saying. And they'll be like snuffed out and they won't be remembered, and it's very tragic. I don't know if I bought into that at the time because I was like, but the episode that was named that was only referring. Oh, it did refer to them all because it said it was referring to both Nowak and the heretics collectively. Okay, so yeah, now I realize that that probably applies to all of them, and that is kind of what the story, or not the story, but the author is trying to depict in that, yeah, all of none of them will be remembered by history because even the backup plan, because the Yolenta's letter being sent was the only thing that succeeded. And it even cost Draka's life to do that, even though it didn't really amount to anything other than fulfilling Yolenta's wish on a whim. That was the backup to the backup plan because Otzi's novel was technically the backup, and Badeni's research was the main thing. That got ruined. Then we were willing to settle for Otzi's book. Then that got ruined when the printing press plans failed because Frey was a fucking traitor. Then we just got Yolenta. So if Otzi's book had been published, we would have remembered. I think he mentions Yolenta in it too, doesn't he? Or no, they were planning to add Yolenta into the print. Then Otzi maybe signed it himself, and he mentions Potoki as well. So if the backup had worked, at least those characters would have been known to history. But then the backup failed too. So we only had the backup to the backup, which was just the Potoki thing, and that was more of a personal epistolary letter to Potoki, which means that's not going to be disseminated. So even that won't be remembered. But so that's why it's just Albert hearing that one line in passing on the movements of the earth, then it gives a subtle psychological inspiration. So yeah, back to my point that that's a really good way to link it to real life history while not making it conflict with real life history. So I think I got a sense of the story with that general framework, but there's still a lot of questions I have in terms of one, Rafal's character is the big elephant in the room in terms of both how did he survive? I guess like we explicitly see or don't see them bothering to explain that. So can we just chalk it up to the story writer not being interested in giving an explanation and just going, hey, just take it for what it is, and yes, he survived. What I'm going to show you after is what matters, not the how. Is that what we should be accepting? But beyond that, there's also how Rafal's character comes off after he comes back. He kills a guy because he's selfish. He's actually thirsty enough for knowledge that he would kill a guy for not sharing it. And how informed is that stance of his on his own story of almost being tortured to death and stuff. Like, is it a traumatic, is it trauma induced, or is it just a general sentiment he has that he came about in a normal way, which means that we should see him as a villain now? But then Albert was kind of thinking about him, back on him as, um, with some amicability still. I imagine that he was his tutor for a long time, so I can buy that he had nostalgic memories for the tutor who taught him every day and all these things and opened his mind. But then there's the thing where he kills his father. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that is something I don't think I can really make sense of, no matter how long I sit here and think about it myself. So that's something I'm going to save to think about and process over with the episode discussion threads and stuff, and see what other people are saying. Maybe also the manga has stuff that the anime might have cut out, some other additional scenes that give more context. So I'm just going to let that go for now. Beyond that, I still have a lot of, maybe not a lot of questions, a few questions. I'm going to list some of the stuff that I still have on my mind, just because this is the last reaction and it's worth talking about and just discussing as much as possible to give this series a ceremonious farewell. So this might not be me. This might not all be like things I consider plot holes or anything, just stuff that I even acknowledge that I might have missed. So one thing that I still need some clarity on is, how come Grabowski was never brought up again in terms of him being the one left with Badeni's research? Or what did Badeni even leave him with, right? Because he left him with the 60 scalps. I think at some point in a previous reaction, we concluded that that probably wasn't Badeni's actual research. It was probably Otzi's book. Because right before he was executed, it seems like Badeni kind of came at peace to his research not being spread, and like the inspiration cultural aspect was just as important, if not more so. But if that is the case and it was Otzi's stuff, how didn't Badeni burn the book without reading it? So it's not like he could have recreated it from memory like Draka did. Yeah, it's kind of like that question's like going through a chain of other follow-up questions. So how did he... Yeah, so what's the deal with Grabowski and the hobos? How come they never came back? Or like it never said how they passed on that information? How did... I also kind of question what made Schmidt fearful for the first time in his life right before he died. There's that. Noak, interestingly enough, in line with us considering him kind of like the best fleshed out character, best written character, he's probably also the character that leaves us with no lingering questions. I think they pretty much explained everything with his character. So yeah, that's Noak's pretty much all clear. I think he got the most closure. Another question I am thinking about is, what was with Otzi's weird dream sequence / flashback when he had the emo hair and he had this like teacher mentor figure in some like ethereal tower going up to the heavens? Like, how much of that was a pure imagination and a dream, and how much was a flashback, or how much was it rooted in someone he knows? Because I don't think we ever met that adult role model teacher figure. So yeah, there's that. Yolenta, I think, is pretty all clear too. Like, it would have been nice to see some little tidbits about how she formed the organization, but for the most part, it's plausible that she did that, all that stuff off screen and stuff. She didn't need to get her hands on any like MacGuffins or whatever to be able to accomplish that stuff. So yeah, I guess just those are a few points. So I am tempted to check out the discussion thread for the final episode and talk about it on the reaction too. I don't know if I want to do that before we talk about maybe rating the anime overall, giving it like a score and comparing it, or seeing if it's like our favorite show of the year. the fact that reading other people's interpretation might make me think a lot differently, um, and influence our score means I should probably read the discussion thread before we try to give it a score. So I am going to do that and keep this reaction rolling, which I'm willing to do because it's a special occasion. So let's check out some stuff. I will be able to edit this if there's too many long pauses. All right, guys, I just read the discussion thread for the final episode. There were some pretty great comments and stuff in there. I think from my takeaway from them, I can pretty much fully accept and be convinced that the new Rafal that we saw wasn't actually like the Rafal that we knew and loved. He was kind of like a hard meta kind of artistic license and symbolism thing of like blurring the line between like fiction and reality and like revisionism and stuff. There was a pretty cool comment that was saying how like the show never really tried to make out religious people or faith to look bad, which I actually agree with and probably felt inclined to say myself at various previous points in previous reactions episodes. They never really tried to make like the church come off as like one-dimensionally evil or wrong, and there was a lot of good storylines involving just having like pure faith beyond anything scientific, like with Noak's character's arc and stuff like that. So that comment went on to, I think, elaborate that they put science and religion on like a fair equal ground, and like the new Rafal kind of was like the reverse Noak in that he was so trusting and believing and resolved in his pursuit of science and knowledge that he was willing to kill. So he was kind of like the hard end of the opposite end of the spectrum, which is, I think I kind of used that wording too when we were watching it. I was like, he's gone radical in the other direction. So I think that was kind of a point the author was trying to make. And on that note, I did end up finding an interview by the author himself where he kind of admits to just trying to intentionally making that ending confusing. Apparently, he was a student of philosophy in university, so he really likes exploring like the philosophical stuff. There's this quote that he said that I think is really cool in regard to making the ending confusing and like blurring the line between fiction and reality. He says, from the moment I began writing Orb, I was thinking a lot about the influence of fiction and reality, so I thought the ending should turn out like that. I believe that fiction and reality are complicit in creating reality. There is no such thing as a lie that purely exists. Lies affect reality, and then fiction is created based on that reality. I wanted to depict this kind of cycle, circulation, and complicity in Orb. So that's really interesting because obviously the wording of cycle too is just going to be super fitting for a story called Orb on the movements of the earth where things move around in circles or ellipticals. And it gives some insight on his intention behind the vague ending. So yeah, I kind of getting more assurance that that wasn't the return of Rafal wasn't meant to be like a concrete, explicit narrative trope plot device or tropey plot development, more so. Opens it up for a more interesting interpretation, I think, and it makes me see the ending in a better light. Let me think if it covers any of the other stuff I was wondering. The stuff about Grabowski, I need to see if they ever followed up on that, if they didn't do it here. I think all in all, I think a lot of my questions are answered for the most part. I want to say that I already said in a previous reaction that I wasn't expecting the show to probably go this hard in the second half and stick the landing. So in regard to how we're rating the show and if it's like anime of the year, I think I'm 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 pretty confident in saying it's more up there than we would have expected. Um, the end, I'm trying to think in terms of like this ending because of how meta and metatextual it is. Does that How much does that make it better than if this was just a straight up story about a historical retelling of some obscure niche topic like the subject matter of finding out that the Earth doesn't equate to the center of the universe and actually revolves around the sun. Like if they had just done a pure historical retelling, I think it kind of would have just got blended into the many other works that are like that. But that it went so philosophical with the author's apparent background in studying philosophy on a higher educational level, and that it got pretty meta, as if to try to. I mean, I feel like some people might think it's pretentious, but I think it works for me in terms of elevating it to trying to express something that can, traverse the time and space that the setting takes place in and kind of make us, give us a lot of food for thought and in terms of just general life and whatnot. So I think this show is really, really good. Even if so, my criticisms of it before we got to this point at the end of the story, sometimes I did feel like the philosophical dialogue was kind of a mouthful, and I would kind of be like, okay, yeah, it's not like I'm necessarily disagreeing with anything they say, but it might not be as provocative or intriguing as for me personally as they're trying to make it seem. Then sometimes with the drama, um, I felt like they were execution wise, they could have made things more fleshed out or juicier or gave them more convincing context. Like I think one example of that is with the characterization of Draka. There were a couple of times where I felt like she was being given too much of a like Mary Sue treatment, and how everybody thought that she was this super impressive expert at economy, as if none of the other members of the church were giving any thought into how profitable the printing press could be and stuff like that. So in terms of that, I think there was some parts of the execution could have been really good, but that's kind of what in turn makes me go back to being impressed with the extra dimension it gave itself with the kind of philosophical and meta nature of the story. Because if it was just a pure retelling of a historical event or historical period, then I would have judged it much more by how it did the conventional drama and execution of story writing. But because it gave it this like very unique ending and stuff, that gives it a lot of brownie points in my opinion. Like there are shows that I was actively comparing this to in terms of writing. Like it reminded me of Vinland Saga a lot, which I've only seen the first season of that. So just for the record, in terms of how I'm thinking of Vinland Saga, it reminds me of like Golden Kamuy a bit, and stuff like that. But I was also explicitly thinking while watching the show is that those other shows that it reminds me of, at the end of the day, I would probably rank those ones better in terms of how they execute the drama and the action and the characterization and stuff. So it was kind of in the same tier, but it wasn't quite superseding those other ones. But now that it's added this extra dimension and kind of elevates itself beyond just being a story about soldiers in this time period or something, it kind of gives itself an edge that might very well put it equal to those or above those. Who knows? I'll have to give it more thought. So yeah, let me see if we can settle on a general score. If I'm going number wise, I think it's easily in the 9 area out of 10. Definitely at least mid 9, so 9.5 plus. I think I might go around 9.7, 9.8, which is, now that I think about it, really high, but I don't think I'm gonna take it back. if I'm gonna go with our more personal ranking system, which isn't numbers but like letters, including like SS and stuff, I might give it an S. S. S, which is above A plus, which would be perfect, 100 out of 100. But when sometimes things are just above being perfect, and they can be flawed masterpieces, so they can be imperfect but still rate higher than something just perfect, because they reach a masterpiece level in some department of their storytelling. Then they get into the S tier. So there can be S, SS, or SS. I'll probably give Orb an S. And in terms of whether this is the anime of the year, I think it might be at the moment. I said it before. As of now, what are our competitors? Taco P was pretty good. City, the animation is pretty good. Yeah, I don't know if it's just a weak year or I haven't watched enough, but I think even now in the latter half of 2025, Orb is probably the top contender for anime of the year for me. And yeah, it was great. This was really fun, guys. Honestly, I'm still fresh off of recording the 6 last episodes in a row, but even now as I'm about to settle down and like go to sleep or whatever, I'm already I got like a sense of nostalgia looking back on all of the big scenes we just saw with all the characters dying and shit. It's really hitting me that this show is like really, really good. So yeah, and I really love that we were able to capture this on as reactions. I was a explicit thought that I had was that I'm shit, I'm so brain dead from being tired, but like with reactions to other shows I've been filming as of late, a fair amount of them I will have this thought where like, oh man, I started filming reactions for this one because I had big expectations for the show before it came out. But as we watched it and found out that it wasn't going to meet our expectations, it kind of bummed me out. But with Orb here now, this is the first one to come in a while where like I can go like I'm so happy that we were able to catch this on camera and film the reactions to it live. And yeah, even if my impression of the series changes over time, if I like rewatch it or something, I'm just so glad to have the initial reaction captured for posterity. And in a previous reaction with the episode that was had that theme about just people being comrades together in the same era. Yeah, that really made me connected to just the act of even filming reactions while you're watching stuff and using it as a avenue to connect with people. A lot of people nowadays will kind of bash stuff that is like indicative of like parasocial relationships, but I kind of disagree for the most part when people demean those kind of things. I've always been like a latchkey kid who found comfort in like TV shows and watching stuff. So yeah, with this show's poeticism affecting me right now, I'm kind of seeing some worth in recording our own reactions to stuff and like putting it out there for people to connect with, if at all. And yes, guys, that was Orb. There's still a lot of for me to process, honestly. Like I said, it was kind of intense to watch all 6 final episodes in a row and in the same night and not have any pause between them. So we're gonna think about this show a lot more for sure, especially because of that final ending was such a mindfuck, so to speak. And we'll see if my impression of it changes for better or for worse. But for the time being, guys, thanks for tuning in to our watch of Orb. 25 episodes. I think this is our first full in the sense of having a decent amount of episodes, like 2 cores worth of episodes, anime series that we've completely reacted to. And this was a very worthy show. So with all that said and done, guys, I am signing out. thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.